Hello everybody, Chris Nelson here. We're going to do a quick video on an upcoming rule change in NADAC regarding tugging in the ring. It is being allowed as of June 1st, 2019 as a probationary rule change. Basically means it will last 6 months while some data is collected from it happening at our shows. And then a vote will be placed in December for whether the rule is going to become permanent and if any adjustments need to be made. There are a few rules that involve this rule change that we're going to mention. First one, tugging is only allowed at the finish line. The dog's feet must remain on the ground. If they leave the ground, you'll get a warning, and if it continues, there'll be elimination for the future runs. And we'll go a little more in depth as to why we're doing that once we start some of these videos for the examples. You cannot tug within 10 feet of any other dog. This applies to the entire trial grounds. Again, just because we'll probably have more people tugging after this goes into effect, we don't want to have any dog-on-dog incidents from people being too close to one another. All rules in NADAC regarding delay of trial are not changing. That'll also come into effect once we start playing the demonstration videos. And then the last one is that you have to leash your dog first and then tug. If you start tugging before your dog is leashed, that will also result in a warning and then obviously an E for future runs if you continue that behavior. And this really goes back to number 4, which is delay of trial. So we're just going to roll into these videos. And first off, we're just going to show you some things that are allowed, basically what we envision it to be. So we're just going to imagine this is the end of the course for all of these videos coming up, even though we're just kind of skipping over it to the end behavior at the leash. So the dog grabbing the leash is perfectly okay, putting it in its mouth, perfectly okay. The handler is actively trying to leash the dog is leashed, and now they're allowed to tug as they make their way out of the ring. Notice the handler doesn't sit at that last obstacle. They weren't sitting there tugging, playing with their dog. They got them leashed, and then they were actively trying to get out of the ring. That is what people currently do, and is what they will need to continue to do. Our next example, pretty much going to be the same thing. Dog finishes, we grab our leash. We are getting leashed up, and then we tug on our way out of the ring, not before. Again, we'll have another example here. Leash runner comes up, hands the handler the leash, dog grabs leash, tugs on the way out of the ring. Now, we'll touch on something really quick. If the dog's feet leave the ground because of the dog's own motion, in other words, it's not the handler lifting the dog off the ground, that's perfectly okay. And it's very obvious to see. You can see in the last few videos, every once in a while, the dog kind of leans back onto its rear legs, and its front feet kind of leave the ground as it pulls back. The big thing, and it will be very obvious to see in the videos that we show after this, is that it is the dog controlling its own motion. It is not the handler controlling the dog's motion. Then again, just another example. I think we have a couple other of the allowed examples here. Leashing up first, leash in mouth, and walking out. So the key thing there is that the dog is leashed first, and then they tug on their way out. That way there is no delay of trial. We're not doing anything that's going to make the trial run exceptionally long. It is worth noting that delay of trial is something that we actually judge currently. So if a handler were to get to the end of the course and then have a big party and not leash up their dog, you would actually be getting the same warning that you will get with this tugging if you tug before leashing your dog, because you're basically not allowing the next dog in line to start at a decent amount of time because you're out there playing with your dog. So that rule is currently in effect and has been for quite a while. Now here's what's not going to be allowed. Start getting into these. So the dog grabbing the leash is perfectly fine. That's not any issue there. The dogs, even currently, they can have the leash in their mouth. That's not a problem. So we've gotten the dog leashed, that's good, but now we are just sitting here. We are sitting at the end of the run. We're lifting the dog up. The handler is lifting the dog up off the ground. Here, we'll go back a little bit farther here. The handler is lifting the dog up off the ground. We're kind of smacking him around a little bit. We're hanging out on the course. We're not trying to leave the course. We're just kind of sitting at the finish line. So all of these things are essentially a delay of trial. The dog's front feet leaving the ground. What we want to touch on with that, for why that is part of this rule change, you can do your own research. I am not personally a vet, so I will not speak as if I am, but we highly recommend everyone to do their own research. It's very well documented that tugging, especially in an up and down motion, aggressively, can be very detrimental to a dog's body. So we just don't want to see that, because we want our dogs to be running with us for as long as possible. So we want to take care of them as much as we can. So that is why we have that front foot rule. Really, the intention of that rule is we do not want the handlers controlling the dog's body. We want the dog to have control over their own body the entire time that they're tugging. But if the handler is the one lifting them off the ground, yanking them around aggressively, that's when you start running into issues with injuries and all that kind of stuff with the dog. And as I mentioned, not personally a vet, so we highly recommend you do your own research, but it definitely does corroborate what we're saying here, which is that lifting motion is not terribly great for the dogs. So that's what we don't want to see. And we'll have another example here. Again, lifting the ground. We're being very aggressive on the tugging. We are not leaving the ring. So we're possibly over-arousing the next dog that was in line while also delaying the trial, so none of that's great. So this is not bad. We've at least gotten leashed, but now we have the same thing. We're being really aggressive. The dog has zero control over its body, being lifted up off the ground. Now here, we aren't even leashed yet. We're purely tugging, and the dog is still completely unleashed. So there's nothing we can do for starting the next dog. Being lifted off the ground very aggressively. Dog has zero control over its body. Just not quite what we want to see. Another example here. Again, good thing we're getting leashed first. But now that we're leashed, we're drawing a lot of attention to ourselves. We're yanking our dog's neck up and down, which is not terribly great for our dog. Being overly aggressive, overly loud, if that would be another word to use. Now, we hope that kind of helps everybody out a little bit. And kind of understanding what we're looking for, what we don't want to see, and what will be allowed and what will not be allowed. Now, obviously, this is a probationary rule change, so there will possibly be adjustments made in December once we've been doing this for a few months and we can kind of see how it works out in the real world. And there will be a vote, and that vote is public, and it is a vote that everyone can come in and voice their opinion on. And the vote is the final deciding factor. So if you like this rule change, then you definitely need to pay attention in December. If you do not like it, you should also pay attention in December for when that vote rolls around. They typically happen somewhere between the 10th and the 15th is when they're posted, and we usually leave them up for about a week. Alright, and that should be it. We hope this video helps to clear up a few questions that people have had, and we look forward to see everybody out there.